Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted more luck in your life, then do we have the Mastery of Good Luck show for you. Today I'll be talking with Mitch Horowitz, a leader in the New Thought movement, PEN Award-winning historian, the author of The Miracle Club, and the Napoleon Hill Success Course series, which includes the miracle of a definite chief aim and one simple idea and a fantastic new masterclass, The Mastery of Good Luck. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about how to benefit from the power of thought and some simple rules to help you get lucky. That plus we'll talk about David Lynch and green lights, emails in court, Louis Pasteur and chants, flying weed and ashtrays, from 5 stories that is, and what in the world Mick Jagger and satisfaction has to do with anything. So welcome back to the show, Mitch. Are you ready to shine?
I am. Great to be here, man, and great to see you.
Great to have you here as well, and a mighty woohoo!
All right.
So before we dive right into things, what's one thing people can do right now in this minute that would help them to change their luck?
Be prepared. Be prepared. It sounds elementary, but it's one of those pieces of elementary advice that we all too often neglect. I was just in an important meeting this morning at a media organization, and almost everything that I prepared to talk about didn't come up. But the very fact that I was prepped and ready to talk about any range of things allowed me to relax during the meeting. I knew there was no curveballs, nothing weird that was going to come out of left field that was going to make things difficult for me. And it turned into exactly what you hope a meeting will be, in which is just a conversation where the different parties just kind of get a feel for one another and come away thinking, all right, I would like to work with this person. Now we'll see what comes next. Preparation allows you to relax. Dale Carnegie made the observation that when you're preparing for a speech, first of all, he made 2 observations about preparation. One is that when you're preparing for a speech, you should always over-prepare and just accept that 90% of what you've boned up on, you're never going to use. But boning up on the rest of that 90% is what allows the 10% to just come out in such a relaxed, dynamic, epic way. And he also made the observation that if after the speech you don't think, gee, I left out something I would have loved to include it, you probably failed, because you should have so much information that it's almost a given that you're going to leave something out. Preparation is one of those things that we think we're familiar with, we think we understand, but I encourage a second and third look at, because you will be not only effective, you will be relaxed if you're prepared.
But if we talk about luck, or we talk about law of attraction in a sense, what we're really talking about is either we can call it energy or we can call it confidence. When you
Yes.
had that confidence in the room this morning, there was no curveball probably that you couldn't have handled, even if you didn't know what the topic was, because your nervous system wasn't, the amygdala system wasn't, revved up,
Yes.
and you're on
Yes.
heightened alert.
Right. And it's also important to make a general observation about luck. Some people in the spiritual culture feel that there's no such thing as luck. I make my own circumstances. The nature of my thoughts dictate or influence what is going to be attracted to me, and so on. In fact, it was funny. I was a television newscaster who reached out to me several months ago and said, I love your work on Neville. I really want to get together. And I said, great. And I sent her a column I did on mastering good luck.
Yeah.
And she wrote back almost as if offended and said, well, I don't believe in luck. I make all my own circumstances. You don't have to give up a sense of self-determinism, a sense of mental creativity, a sense of mental causation, to also acknowledge that there are odds in the world. You flip a coin 1,000 times, eventually the odds are going to even out. You can actually affect those odds if you are gifted with psychical abilities of some sort. That's a whole different question. But nonetheless, that gift even will probably manifest itself most of the time in just a few percentage points of difference. By and large, we 5 sensory beings living in this world do experience the so-called law of averages and laws of luck. And luck is a very mysterious thing. It's difficult to say what luck is when we're able to detect cause and effect behind every event, even if after the fact. So the question is, can we influence cause and effect, not only through our minds, but through our conduct? And I believe we can. I do believe we can influence good luck.
And that's what we're going to talk about here today. Now, when I coach somebody and I look at the string, you can always go in reverse. Hindsight is 2020, and look at the string of somebody's life. What you always see is, yes, they were prepared, and that's Louis Pasteur. However, you life is always dictated to me by things out of control. So the more that we bring these 13 pieces that we're going to talk about here today into the fray, the
Yeah,
more we're ready when the phone rings, when the synchronistic bump, which literally could be, rear-ending somebody with your car, who knows what it is. When
right.
these events take place that can launch our lives and launch our careers take place, we are ready.
Yes, right on. Uh, yeah, I would say preparation is probably the golden rule of luck. And Pasteur made a statement which is popularized, but the popularization is accurate, and that is chance favors the prepared mind. Chance favors the prepared mind. That is gospel in terms of laws of luck. It is absolutely vital that if you are prepared for every possible contingency, the way a martial artist works his or her routines over and over, the way a musician is constantly practicing scales, the way a commando is constantly practicing for his or her next mission, dealing with every possible contingency, you bend circumstance, you bend cause to the greatest possible degree to favor your outcome. In a way, it sounds elementary, but when you start to actually break it down, it's fascinating the number of ways this can play out. Then there are also more mysterious ways of luck. In this book, Mastery of Good Luck, write about a surgeon, a neurosurgeon from the University of Arizona, who disclosed to me that he believes very strongly in what we colloquially call good and bad luck. And he's gone so far as to reschedule operations if he got what seemed like a bad augury or bad omen or something like that. He said, look, we really don't know what luck is. There's this mysterious undercurrent of cause and effect, a complexity of things going on that we can't see. And he said to me, I've seen many cases where people have lived or died on operating tables based on what we call luck. So treat notions of luck with great veneration. Treat it like something sacred because it's really invisible causes.
Awesome. It's something we were talking about off air because there's a project we're going to work on together. And I said,
Yes.
I need it to feel like flow. And I'm guessing that surgeon could sense, he's very much a Jedi sense at this point, this operation isn't feeling like flow today or this weekend. I better cancel. I better reschedule. I better step back from it, following that gut instinct.
Yes.
Switching gears real briefly, I want to talk about these 13 rules, but I
Please.
picked up on this, and you know what I picked up on. Why 13?
Well, it just seemed like a propitious number. We're all frightened of the number 13. I say dance with the fear a little bit.
Yes.
I've always been attracted to the number 13. It's a very intriguing number. 13 appears as a kind of negative omen across many different cultures. It's very interesting. In our Western culture, Judas Iscariot was seen as the 13th man at the Last Supper. In Vedic culture, it's considered bad luck to have 13 people seated at a banquet. In Nordic culture, the god Loki, the god of mischief, is an uninvited guest to a banquet of the gods. He's the 13th guest, and the banquet ends in violence and argument. So here you have Nordic, Hebraic, and Vedic culture, all very different, all very distant, and yet they all agree that there's something tricky about the number 13. And yet I also sort of like to dance with that. So my feeling is we can turn that on its head, and hence we have 13 laws of good luck.
I like it. And 2 of our 3 cats are black. And I had
Yeah.
even forgotten in recent years the idea. Somebody once said something about a black cat. And I'm like, wait, I forgot. We have black cats. So you could have
Right.
put cats on the cover as well.
That's true, actually.
Let's go into these 13 right here. The first one you actually talked about with a neurosurgeon. Luck is learnable. What does that
Yes.
mean?
Well, I think that there's certain things that, look, there are certain factors where our lives are completely subject to chance, like gambling, for example. I'm not much of a gambler. For everybody who says they have a system, I haven't seen many casinos go out of business recently.
I'm going to stop you right there because I have a
Yeah,
friend who's one of the top in the World Series of poker, and
poker. Yeah,
you would be
poker and
fascinated by
sports.
it. Yes.
Yeah, poker and sports seem to be the one place where you can bend luck. Poker has massive aspects of skill involved in it, and of course, sports really is research. If you know what's going on, you can make at least an educated prediction. But the other games, blackjack and craps and so on, baccarat. I think you're really playing with games of chance. I wouldn't tempt those gods. Those gods always win, always, always. However, in our day-to-day lives, there's a lot more complexity going on. The more complex the situation, the more you can bend the rules. Sports is complex. Poker is complex. Partly because you're dealing with the psychology of other people.
Yeah.
Those are not really games of chance in the same way as craps is a game of chance. The more dynamic the system you're functioning in, the more you can bend these laws. And life itself is a very dynamic system, as we know. So where there's a complexity of causes, you are presented with a complexity of possibilities.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So there's a lot of great quotes and stories in here. One of them is about a famous actor who was telling you about luck and determining the things that make you lucky.
Yes. Now, this was really, really intriguing. A famous actor said to a friend of mine, he was asked, what do you find to be the key principle of success in your life? And he responded to my friend, determine those things that make you lucky and then do more of them. Determine those things that make you lucky and then do more of them. And that's a fascinating statement because those things that make us lucky are going to be different for every individual.
Mm-hmm.
But to my mind, it means determining what kinds of people should you be hanging around? What kinds of people always seem to be a source of constructive action, ideas, completion of projects, versus what kinds of people or specific people are always a source of delay, detriment, so on. What kinds of settings do you do best in? What kinds of topics do you best in? Where are you happiest? What are the things that allow flow to occur, and just keep doing more of them? Again, it can sound elementary, but I don't always follow that rule. I deal sometimes with groups of people who are perpetual sources of difficulty to me. And I keep trying to figure out, how do I do it right this time? Well, I'm in the wrong company. I'm simply in the wrong company. The great management guru, Peter Drucker, who I wish was still with us, he said you should work only with people who are receptive to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
Work only with people who are receptive to what you're trying to accomplish. So this is one of these areas, and it's only one. I'm just talking about relationships, but determine those things that make you lucky and then do more of them. Think of times in your life where you've been your most relaxed, where you've been your most confident, productive, able, where you like the people around you, where you feel like time just flies right by. We're getting very, very valuable hints in each and every one of those situations about things that make us lucky, and we should do more of them. So that was his principle.
I love it. I know this summer I went to the American Renewable Energy Day Symposium, had all this amazing synchronicity, went to the World Summit of Nobel Peace Laureates this fall, had amazing synchronicity. When I'm willing to kick myself up and out of my chair and surround myself with
Yeah.
like-minded individuals, particularly out, away, because you're lighter at that point, you can pivot more. I call it
It's
road
valuable.
magic.
I like that. Road magic. That's wonderful. I've often solved problems in my life while traveling. I find just even being on an airplane and being in a new locale, it does shift one's perspective and things get unstuck.
Awesome, awesome. So speaking about unstuck and traveling, David Lynch and Watch for Green Lights.
Yes. Lynch said that when he was in art school in Philadelphia, he was dedicated to painting and that he thought that that would be his life's path. And then he got interested in film and he started to see movie making as a kind of moving painting. And at a certain point, he had to decide, what am I going to do? Am I going to pursue film or am I going to pursue painting? And he decided to pursue film because he said that's where he was getting the green lights. And he said, just watch for those green lights. Where is something easy? I know I have a friend who's an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur in sports memorabilia, and he makes the statement, if it isn't easy, it isn't possible. And
Wow.
that's contrary to a lot of our thinking because we think in terms of persistence, determination, I'm going to do it. But his point is that when you meet somebody, when you sit down to complete a project, when you sit down to uh, pursue some new endeavor, you have to be, as David was saying, you have to be getting those green lights. Yes, it may be hard work, but that hard work should be beckoned by open roads. If you keep getting red or yellow lights, obviously you know there's something wrong. Don't be intelligently persistent. Be intelligently persistent. So that's what David was getting at with his green light statement.
And I like that. And I love this quote that your friend said, because to me, if it's not flow, then sooner or later you're being Sisyphus. Sooner or later you
Without
are
question.
going to hit a block and go, oh crap, I could have shifted gears 10, 20
Yes.
steps earlier.
Yes, absolutely. And that's vitally important to watch for. I think that when I always tell people also things happen within a certain context. Sometimes people will publish a new book or something and they'll get a good review and then they'll get a second good review. And I'll say to them, this is going to keep happening. Something good is happening here. And they're sort of cautious and say, well, gee, I feel like it could all end tomorrow. Look for context. Look for context. Likewise, if you keep running into problems, I've had experiences where there are certain publications that just don't get me, or there are certain organizations that just don't get me. Leave it and walk away from it because there'll be a constituency that does get you, and then you'll be in that place of receptivity or flow.
Awesome, awesome. So let's go into rule number 2, and this does have to do with people who get it. Cultivate chemistry. And you talk about Mick Jagger talking with Larry King. We're talking about the Stones and his career success when he was on his own versus when he was with the band.
It's fascinating. Mick Jagger, everyone would agree, is a tremendously talented man, tremendously shrewd man, and a great businessman. So, what's your favorite Mick Jagger solo song? There aren't any. Everyone has a favorite Rolling Stones song. Every sentient being has a favorite Rolling Stones song. Almost no one has a favorite Mick Jagger solo song. Mick has recorded solo albums. Mick has made movies. Mick has done lots of interesting and exciting things, but nothing has replicated or even come close to replicating the success he's had with the Stones. The Stones are a unique, organic unit, and that's true for every single member of the band. All the members of the Stones, you name it, past, present, they have done solo projects. The great Bill Wyman has done solo projects. Charlie Watts has done solo projects. Keith has done solo projects. Ron Wood was in the Faces. Mick has done. They've all done things. They're dynamic, exciting, capable human beings, but none of them have approached in their solo projects the splendor of what they do in the Stones. The point of all this is that chemistry really matters. Chemistry really, really matters. When you are in a good situation, even if people irritate you, even if there's friction, do not exit that situation. If I can continue with the music metaphor,
Go for
I
it.
want to share something in connection with the band The Clash, my favorite band,
Excellent.
that really touched me. There was a documentary about The Clash called West Way to the World, and the band broke up after a very short time together. They were only together for about 5 years, which is incredible because they had such an impact and did so much. And Joe Strummer, who's now deceased, was talking about he and Mick Jones, the other key songwriter in the band, parting ways. And he sounded melancholy about it, and he sounded regretful about it in the film. And he said, "Look, the truth is." What did he say? He said Mick would show up late for rehearsals, like Elizabeth Taylor with a stinky attitude, and we just started to get pissed at one another, and so we broke up. And he said, "But I'll tell you," and he was very melancholy and very reflective. And he said, "If you have something good going, wake up in the morning and do whatever you need to do to keep it going, because you have no idea how rare it is." And I was profoundly touched by that because here it was post breakup, and not many people in public life
Yeah.
are frank about what goes on behind the scenes. And he was basically saying he was sorry that this happened. And in every situation, every domestic situation, every work situation, every creative partnership, there's going to be friction. I mean, this is how it is. This is how the human species is made. Sometimes that friction is very positive because sometimes opposition can bring out greater things, things that wouldn't be there if opposition were absent. Um, and I take that very, very seriously. At the same time, there's also going to be disaffection, arguments. People are going to irritate one another. Regardless, always think back to what Joe Strummer said. If you've got something good going, you get up in the morning and you do whatever you need to do to keep it together because you don't know how rare it is. Watch for chemistry. I have seen a lot of successful people who thought that it was them rather than the mixture, the admixture of their surroundings that was the success. And when they exited the television show, the company, whatever, the school, whatever it is, where they exited the community where they had their success, that success went away. It wasn't because they were different. It wasn't because they were great then and they're bad now. It's because there was a complexity of factors that built that success. Respect chemistry. That's a rule of good luck.
Excellent. Let's do the third rule, which is get noticed. And what in the world's wrong with just keep your head down?
Yeah, this came to me through a variety of factors, including the experience of a friend who works in audio publishing, and she was an engineer, and she was telling a colleague of hers how much she was grokking to a book she was working on, a book she was recording, an audio book. And the senior colleague said, "Wow, I've never seen you so excited about a project before." And she thought to herself, "I'm excited all the time, but I don't reveal it to people." She had been given some very bad advice years earlier, which unfortunately she had taken, which was a corporate publishing executive said to her, "The way to get ahead around this place is to keep your head down. Don't make too much noise." And so she kept her head down to the point where people didn't realize how committed and dedicated she was to her projects. I decry that advice. I don't believe in keeping your head down. To me, keeping your head down is never learning. It's task dumping onto other people. It's a surefire way to get overlooked and not to get noticed. And even if you do get noticed, you get noticed for the wrong things. Do you want to be just a nice, well-oiled cog in the machine, or do you want to come up with a better machine? I just think that whatever you're doing, you should be public about it. You want to get noticed, and you want to get noticed for the right things.
Thank you. And we had on a monk, I think it was in our first year of having on the show, I believe his name was Ajahn Brahm. And in talking about taking credit when it is given, he would always say, "Thank you, I deserve that."
That's funny.
So he would embody credit, which I believe brings more of it about.
Yes, I think when credit is legitimately uh, accepted, I think it does bring more of it about. I remember the philosopher Jacob Needleman once said to me, "What do you do when someone offers you a gift?" And I looked at him blankly, great student that I was, and he said to me, "You accept it. You accept it." So when someone offers you praise or credit, accept it. Accept it. A corporate friend of mine said, "You'll get blamed when you don't deserve it too. So when praise is given to you, accept it." Now, of course, I don't think somebody should be a grade grubber. I think there should be integrity. But if you've worked hard and you're given credit as a gift, accept it.
Excellent, excellent. So let's go to number 4. We actually talked about this a little bit earlier. Prepared minds win. And it's something I've been talking with a lot of coaching clients about lately, which is becoming an expert in your field.
Yes. And a key to preparation is specialization. I believe very strongly that people should really, really serve to know everything there is to know about the niche area of their field. And that might take you in a variety of different directions as a means of presenting and exercising what you know, but you should be very, very clear on what it is you do and feel assured that you can learn everything there is to learn about it. If I'm interested in metaphysics, then I have to be immersed joyfully and gratefully and rigorously in everything that's going on in my field. It doesn't mean that I have to be interested in everything or everyone that comes along. It doesn't mean that every single one of us has to be a master in social media or have his or her own podcast or whatever it is. But it does mean that whatever avenues you choose to go down, your mission should always be very clear. My mission is to document metaphysical experience in history and practice. That's what I do. It's that simple. It's that simple. Everyone should have a sense of mission that's that simple. That invites preparation because you're focused, you're concentrated.
Excellent, excellent. So let's go to number 5, sobriety. Sobriety is lucky. And
Sobriety is lucky.
ashtrays and weed flying out fifth-story windows.
Right. I live in a fifth-story walk-up where I'm sitting now. I decided one day earlier this year that I was imbibing too much. So I threw an ashtray and weed out my window. I was very careful. Nobody was down in the courtyard. I did go down later and clean it up. Now, my existence is not a sober existence, but I did decide at that time that I needed to do that for myself at that time in my life. And what I found is that, well, I'll use a quote from a friend of mine who's a prosecutor here in New York City. He said that, speaking as a prosecutor in a large metropolitan area, he said, if you want to avoid violence, stay away from places where large amounts of alcohol are being served. Because he found that most of the acts of violence that he was prosecuting broke out either at bars, clubs, picnics, or sporting events where huge amounts of alcohol were being imbibed. And so if somebody thought that someone dissed them, somebody might go home, get a gun or get a baseball bat or something, and, tragedy occurs. And he said much of the time, grudges, arguments, perceived disrespect gets inflamed and spills over into violence in settings where large amounts of alcohol are being served. So I'm not sober, but I want people to watch their intake of substances, whether it's pot or drugs or booze. Many of us use these substances to relax. I do. I am not a friend of Bill, but I love Bill and I believe in Bill. And I just want people to keep a close eye on the extent to which they're imbibing, because I think that can become a detriment to your work. It can endanger your health. It can put you in endangering circumstances. Again, if you've ever heard about a tragic fight or somebody getting stitches in their head, 9 times out of 10, that broke out at a bar. The other times it broke out on a highway. But alcohol, it coincides with a lot of events of violence in our culture, including at sporting events, including when people are boating, including, heaven forbid, when people are driving. You got to watch it. You got to watch it. If there's a lot of that in your life, you're courting something dangerous.
I want to put a slight twist on it, and I particularly watch with coaching clients who, if they're doing too much of something, whatever it is, it kind of clouds the brain. It kind of spills over into all areas. And there's one area I am historically known for not watching the news. The stories will chase me down. When you have this big of a show, you can't escape anything. It will find you and find you quickly. However, things have been moving at such a rapid pace recently that I dove back in last week. And what I learned from the experience is how much of a dopamine rush you can get from the news. And no matter what side you're on, the news, whatever medium you go to, they're going to give you some stories that are going to support you, some stories that are not, to bring you on this roller coaster ride. And the next thing you know, you've lost yourself because of this dopamine ride that you're on.
Yeah, and that happens on social media as well. And I think that's why there are so many angry comment chains on Twitter and so on. And you got to really watch out for that, because that dopamine hit, and that sort of lust for a contest, and which side of the contest am I on? And I have to make sure I win. That's addictive in its way, and that's why people get so attached to social media. Uh, that's also why a lot of the comments on social media, unfortunately, are snarky, are sarcastic, are hostile, because people get this rush from anger. Anger can become entertainment, anger can feed adrenaline or dopamine. The sense of contest is infectious, and contests are part of human life. If you're into martial arts or whatever, there is a contest going on. But if that becomes the norm and you're following a contest all the time in the news or on social media, that becomes an addiction, and it will erode your effectiveness, your work, your sense of self.
Yeah, and that energy will take you out of the flow of luck.
Without question.
Let's go from there. Let's talk about number six, the number six rule: persistence beats odds.
Yes, it's a really fascinating aspect of life, and I want people to really, really grok to it. If you can If you can stand your ground, stick with what you're doing, maintain your principles, maintain your workload, maintain your tasks, eventually there is a kind of wheel of fortune that will turn around to you. It will turn around to you. The arc of that wheel can be very difficult to trace, and it can seem very far distant at times. But if you stick around, it will come around to meet you. It will also depart, so you have to be careful. But I am absolutely persuaded that the prepared person is not only better positioned to take advantage when the wheel of fortune lifts him or her, but a success in career, in culture, is very often remembered much, much longer than a failure is. Winston Churchill is not remembered for having committed a bungled, horrific military operation in Turkey during the First World War, which cost the lives of tens of thousands of Allied soldiers. Nor is Winston Churchill remembered for having gotten voted out of office immediately after the Second World War, which he was. He is remembered for recognizing the threat of Nazism when other European leaders were ignoring it, were in denial, and for marshaling Britain and the Allies through the Second World War. That is how Winston Churchill is remembered. I know that's an epic example. I know that's an example that may seem out of scale with what we deal with on day-to-day life, but as above, so below. Successes really, really linger, especially in business, military, finance, politics, culture, which covers most of the places that we all work in life. They often outshine failures. Failures tend to be forgotten, and one success tends to linger. So, although the wheel of fortune is going to take you up and it's going to take you down, the prepared person is more apt to reap the fruits of the upswing in the wheel of fortune. And when the inevitable downswing comes, and it comes just because that's life, the things that don't work out, or the setbacks or the failures, will not be remembered as much as the sterling successes will. So this is a way in which you can trick the wheel of fortune, so to speak. It's also an argument for maintaining your workload, standing your ground, sticking with something, because when you persist, it's not just kind of a good work ethic, although it's certainly that. You're playing the odds of life, and you're going to get lifted at a certain point.
Thank you. When I look at this show, we're now, I think, 1,240, coming up on 1,250 shows in, which just sounds crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in a plateau. When we
Right.
feel if we're doing something that we feel called, if we're being tugged forward, and I think that's important, and we're going, I am not making progress, I am just holding my ground, you are doing anything but. There is so much of a machine going on under the surface, the different directions that
Yes,
things have pulled us
absolutely.
in, positive ways this year, also big
Yes.
challenges.
Yes.
But by putting ourselves out there each and every day, we
I dig
increase
that.
the odds dramatically.
I dig that. I really do believe in that in my heart. And it can be frustrating for people too, because sometimes in workplaces, people will observe a feckless or apathetic colleague getting places, and it can feel very unfair. And I sympathize with that. I've had those feelings myself, and sometimes just because the wheel of fortune goes up and down, life can seem unfair, and I know that's frustrating. But it should also be there's a positive lesson in that. If a mediocre person, just by sticking around, can experience successes, how much more successful can you be by sticking around as a person of excellence? If you stick around, you'll get good things, you'll get bad things, but a person of excellence will be more prepared to take advantage of the good things, and the bad things, inevitably, they shine less brightly. Remember what Churchill is remembered for. I know it's an epic example, but there's truth to that as a general rule of life.
So and let's talk about that. We can almost talk about epic failure, because if we go to number 8, the number 8 rule, failure is lucky. The things that we regret the most at the moment, like when I turned down Hay House and being on the You Can Do It tour with Wayne Dyer, which would have made me the barefoot guy for life, turned out to be our greatest boons, aren't they?
It is very often the case, if you can stick around and maintain perspective on things, you will see there is a certain symmetry. I've had lots of situations where I've gotten rejections, and those rejections sting. And I'm very sensitive. So sometimes that emotional sting will stay with me for a week or so. But after the emotional sting dissipates, and it will dissipate, you will find that there is a set of relationships that are more appealing, more attractive, easier, more amenable, that will come to you. Michael, I can think of so many instances where I'm so grateful I didn't get what I wanted.
Yes.
And this is something I'm going to be working with over the next 12 months. And when I feel I get someplace, maybe we can do a show on it. But I've often asked myself, what rescues me? What rescues me? And I don't want to come up with any easy or rote answer to that question. But I'm sure your listeners have had this experience. I'm sure you've had this experience where you pray for something, you visualize something, you affirm something, you don't get it, and it feels very disappointing. And you say to yourself, where did I go wrong? What did I mess up here? Am I wrong about all this spiritual stuff? Um, if you're like me, you start to ask yourself questions.
Mm-hmm.
And often what happens is you look back and you say, wow, I am so grateful I didn't get that thing. That thing
Yes.
would have been awful. That would have been the wrong job, the wrong relationship, the wrong partnership. It just took me 6 months to see it, and now I've got something better. Happens all the time. What rescues us? What rescues us? Because if we always got what we wanted from our visualizations, our affirmations, our prayers, we simply don't have the perspective to always know. We have some perspective. I don't say we have none. We have some perspective. But something has rescued me, and I've gotten something immensely more satisfying than the wrong thing I had pinned my hopes on. And I'm super curious about that. And again, we all have our rote answers as to what that is. I don't want a rote answer. I want to really study it. And I'm going to work on that for the next 12 months.
I'm going to resist giving you my rote or not so rote answers from my experience. I definitely want to hear what you come up with.
Okay.
This is something I think about on a daily basis. And
that's fascinating.
And a term a author recently gave me, I want to dive into something called prahabdma karma. And I know I'm butchering that word, but I want to dive into that, which has to do with this. We'll switch gears slightly. You said it may be 6 months. But to me, one of the keys here is that if you give it time, magic takes place. In fact, you talk about, when it comes to failure, the danger of too much success too soon, or peaking at a young age. In other words, before we are ready to handle it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who peaked at a young age or who came into near celebrity or success, and it just freaked them out. It It played havoc with their relationships. I don't dig. I may sound, ageist or something when I say this, or I may sound like, I'm venting sour grapes or something, but I can only offer you what I can offer you. I don't dig these 30 under 30 lists, because I feel frankly like, first of all, a lot of those people on those, well, I won't go that
far. Okay, Mitch, I got to challenge you now. Right. Where were you going?
No, a lot of people on those lists you never hear from again. And the reason is that you don't really have it together in life until you've gone out into the world more. I realize that like a lot of musicians make magic when they're in their 20s, and I bow to that and I venerate it. But for people who are in creative fields, in finance, in just different areas of life, I have personally found that they don't really reach the fruition of their brilliance until they're well past that point. And it's sometimes not even visible, conceivable at that early age, who's sort of shaping up into something and what. When I was in publishing, I found that the vast majority of books I published that had posterity were written by people who were in middle age. I didn't publish my first book until I was over the age of 40. I'm 53 at this time in life. And I have found there are also certain writers who continue to do some of their most potent work well into their advanced years, provided they kept at it, provided they worked hard. I know certain writers who continued to work every single day, into their 70s and 80s, as opposed to just kicking back and letting their acolytes or their students string together, collections of their work and just churn out books that weren't really books, but were just more tributes. And anyway, I don't mean to go on and on about it, but I have a lot of faith in maturity and in what can happen in a person's life when he or she is mature. There's a lot of great artists who didn't do their best work until they were, say, over the age of 40, and that should be studied.
I love it. We had on Rich Karlgaard, the publisher of Forbes, a few years back, actually maybe only a year or two back, talking about late bloomers, and put late in quotes because today, in today's world, that's over 30, which is just craziness. But no matter what age we are, if we draw out a timeline and we say, if I took 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, heck, I know that I'm not going to be retiring. I'll take 20 years or more and work on one chief aim.
Right, one chief aim.
It is
my mantra.
magical how
Yes.
far you are going to get.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. No, there's no question in my mind. I'm a better writer, better speaker. I feel more at home in my skin today at age 53 than I did, say, at age 33. If you had taken a snapshot of me at age 33, you wouldn't have been able to predict where I am today. And I celebrate that. And I ask people to scrutinize such things in their own lives and learn from them.
Excellent. So let's go to number 10. No is not always final. And I have a mantra, and Jessica says it a lot around me as well. Michael doesn't believe in no, just not yet.
That's wonderful. Michael doesn't believe in no, just not yet. That's wonderful. I think I was taught this by a businessman I know, and he said, you should never take no for an answer because conditions can change and then the answer will change. Conditions can change and then the answer will change. It's tough to balance this because it doesn't mean being a pest. It doesn't mean being a perpetual nudge. It doesn't mean intruding upon people when they've asked you to, chill out.
Right.
But it does mean, I think, maintaining good relations with people. If you maintain good relations with people, you will always be able to go back to that person and say, what's up? How you doing? And maybe reintroduce an idea that you had brought to them 2 years ago. I knew a Hollywood producer, a very successful guy, and he was one of these people that every time he saw people, he would, hug them and glad hand them and say, hey, buddy, how you doing? And you could look at it and say, gee, that's so phony, that's so fake, how Hollywood. But there was a brilliance to it, and that brilliance was that he kept good relations with everybody so that if something came along that he wanted a part of, he could always pick up a phone, he could always send an email, and it was like, hey, how you doing? And I saw in his practices that when he got told no, he didn't turn on the person. He didn't turn on the person. He wasn't negative towards the person. And I got to be careful with that in my own experience because I tend to be impatient. I tend to feel like if something good is going to happen, it's going to happen quickly. And if somebody's not getting back to me, it's because they don't care. And, and then my mind can go in negative directions from there. But that's not true. That's not true. And I'm starting to unlearn that at this point in my life. Um, a journalist had made a statement that good news never travels slowly, and that was my mantra for a while. But a friend of mine who's a filmmaker said to me, "That's not true, and you got to let go of that." She said, "Many of the great things that have happened in my life have happened slowly. You don't know what's going on with somebody. You don't know what pressures they're
Yeah.
under. They might be dealing with a financial issue, a health issue, a travel issue, a personal issue. They might, have deadlines that are commanding all their emotional or intellectual attention. And if you're just chill and you keep things mellow so that you can reapproach that person down the road, you may get a completely different answer. You may get the answer that you want." And that's exactly what my businessman friend was saying when he observed conditions can change, then the answer can change. So it's not about being pushy, and it's not about being a mega nudge. It's about just taking a pause, you know, going away, and then coming back, always with good spirits. Always with good spirits. It's funny. Um, I'm thinking about taking boxing lessons. And boxing lessons are very time consuming,
Mhm.
they're very expensive, and they're a big commitment. And unless you're ready to go into it all the way, best not to go in at all. And there's an instructor I was talking to, and the guy probably thinks I've blown him off a couple of times because we've made dates and we've never gotten together. And it has nothing to do with him. It's me. I just have to know that those three conditions are in place. And if the person hangs in with me in a friendly way, I'll come back with him. If the person is not friendly, even though I understand why he might feel disappointed that I haven't, put pen to paper yet, I get it. I feel disappointed too, in such situations. It's less likely I'm going to come back to him. So it's not about glad handing people or being milquetoast. It's about realizing that human beings have all kinds of motives, and a no or a maybe can turn into a yes. So don't spoil the well water. You can always come back and drink from that well later. No is never final.
And I'll add to that one little thing, which is don't give up. You like you say, you have no idea what's going on in that other person's life. So when you pause, don't also write them or your idea off for a lifetime. This comes back to
Amen.
the not yet. Have a way, put a note in your calendar, 6 months, a year, 2 years,
Amen.
or double back rather than shooting yourself down.
Right. Amen. Amen.
So
Couldn't agree more.
I'm fascinated about boxing. I tried it years ago. I took lessons until my instructor one day came in and he was sick somehow, had an instruction lesson with him, and I got pneumonia and I called that a TKO. And I haven't
Oh,
boxed
wow.
since.
Well, I took boxing lessons years ago, and I loved it because it gets you in great shape. But you also have to decide, do you want to spar? Because when somebody's hitting you back, you're going to have a different experience, and
Yes.
you got to be prepared for that. And so when I go into it, I want to know I'm going into it all the way.
Wow, wow, wow. I want to hear where this goes. I'm very
Sure.
excited about this.
Yeah.
And in fact, going to excitement, rule number 11, never confuse enthusiasm with optimism.
Right. Right. I believe that there's nothing wrong with being a worrywart, provided you are a persistent worrywart, provided being a worrywart doesn't paralyze you.
Yeah.
People who worry about things and who create contingency plans for things very often have reason to use those contingency plans because life being what it is, things just get messed up sometimes or go in a different direction. I don't think that those of us who consider ourselves, as I do, part of the positive mind culture,
Mhm.
have to constantly cultivate this unrealistically rosy outlook on everything. Yes, things get messed up sometimes. Yes, double check your work, make multiple copies. If possible, do something yourself rather than ask somebody else to do it because you know it will get done. It's just that simple. And enthusiasm is the magic that makes things happen in life. If you can be an enthusiastic pessimist, for example, you will create contingency plans.
Yeah.
You will have backups. You will not be taken by surprise, but you will also be persistent. You won't be paralyzed. It's not the same thing as procrastinating. It's very, very different.
I think you just labeled me. I've never thought of myself as a pessimist, but certainly ever since I took arms control like multiple decades ago, and I learned the concept trust but verify. When you
Right.
have an arms agreement, I'm very trusting of the universe. Yet we had a forest fire here near here, a mile and a half from here last year, and I have my contingency plan ready to
Absolutely.
go. And I know when I finish an interview, I will not pause. I will not take a breath. I will have backed up my files
Brilliant.
right away.
Brilliant. And I always tell people, if you bring something with you that you don't think, you're not sure if you'll need it, bring it with you, then you won't need it. Bring it with you,
Yeah.
then you won't need it. There's some weird law there.
Really, really briefly, summer 2003, there was a dream assignment. We've talked about it many times with Barry Zito that changed your life. It almost didn't happen.
It almost didn't happen. Science of Mind magazine asked me to interview the major league pitcher Barry Zito, who uses a lot of our mind metaphysics methods in his own training routine. And I was recording the phone call, and at the last minute, I had already checked and rechecked my equipment. I checked my equipment recording a live call, and I found out that there was a glitch. Something was amiss. But I wouldn't have been able to notice this glitch until I was test recording a live call. The fact that I made that extra effort just a few minutes before I spoke with Barry to test my audio equipment in live conditions averted a disaster. The call wouldn't have been recorded. A great positive turning point in my life wouldn't have occurred if I hadn't been rigorous enough, nervous enough, thorough enough to check my recording equipment under live conditions. Don't let anybody tell you to relax. You don't need to relax. You need to be enthusiastic.
Mhm.
And if your enthusiasm brings you to recheck your work, you will catch things where the other person won't.
Love it, love it, love it. And the last note on this is before our interview, I am always checking my recording, even if the guest is like, "Come on, let's go and let's get going."
Right.
No, I've got to get centered, drop down, and double check, or else, boy, am I going to feel bad about things afterwards.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have found that, listen, double checking one's work, arithmetic, the spelling of the words in the first line of your novel, most mistakes are going to happen like right in your home,
Yes.
because the surroundings are so familiar that you're apt to be inattentive. Pay close attention to the things that are most familiar, because that's where we go to sleep and that's where mistakes occur.
And a last addendum to your addendum to my addendum on that is I believe there's a warm up into everything that we do. So, for instance, I'm more likely to say, "Hi, what?" And it's Michael Sandler, and to trip over a word or two at the
Right.
start of the show, which can be the first words in a novel, for instance. We start tripping as we're getting into the flow.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's funny, one should allow for that. And also, I was just thinking of a gimmick, but a very good gimmick I saw somebody use once in a social situation, and I use it all the time. It's different from the point you were making, but your point when you said I'm Michael Sandler reminded me of it.
Yeah.
Many of us do have trouble with names, even when we know who someone is. Don't be embarrassed to repeat your name to somebody. It's perfectly fine to hold out your hand, shaking hands with somebody, and say, Michael Sandler, how are you? Mitch Horowitz, how are you? I remember a literary agent did this with me once, and I always found it a very socially graceful way of taking the pressure off the other person. There was a literary agent who ran into me in the lobby of a building, and she said, Mitch, hi, how are you? And I looked at her and I had that deer in the headlights moment where I
I've
was
had
like,
this many times.
I know this person and I cannot remember her name. And without missing a beat, she stuck out her hand and she said, Alice Martell. And I said, Alice, how are you? And it had great savoir faire. It was socially graceful. And it just took the heat off the other person because people don't always remember, even if they remember. It takes them 30 seconds. They're lost in the moment. It's totally cool and it's very socially graceful and it will be appreciated by the other person. If you're at a party, a reception, a business meeting, and even if you think someone has met you before, you can stick your hand out and say, Mitch Horowitz, nice to see you. They will be so grateful. So, little social grace that can be useful.
Don't you think the world would be a different place if we all had a name tag on that said, "Hello, my name is"?
Yes, and the full name, the full name. I went to some new age seminar once, and everybody's walking around with just their first names, which is not helpful because you know it's kind of meant to like break ice, but it still makes you like talk to people without having like the slightest idea. Do I have anything in common with this guy?
Yeah.
Do I know who this guy is? Um, and I also find it very gracious, by the way, when people who are known to other people still introduce themselves. I think it's very, very gracious. I remember somebody was telling me, I'm not making a political comment. I don't care one way or the other about the man's politics. But Pete Wilson, the former governor of California, he said, walked into a party and he didn't know anybody. And, uh, and so he just walked up to my friend and he said, Pete Wilson, governor of California. So immediately they had something to talk about. And he wasn't above introducing himself. And I think that's cool, just on a personal note.
I love that. And that's a perfect segue to the next one. I believe this is number 12 here. Humiliate no one.
So important. When you humiliate a person, if you are a snob to them, if you are rude to them, if you insult them, if you correct their grammar in public or whatever it may be, they will never, never forget. You will forget. They will not forget. And it can come back to you at unexpected moments. I have seen lots of powerful people, some famous, some unknown, have their lives disrupted by embarrassment, by unwanted attention, because someone they humiliated took the opportunity to even the score, so to speak. I'm not saying that it's right or that it's ethical or that it's moral. I'm just saying it's the way of human nature. If you hurt another person's feelings and you get a glimmer of it, apologize and apologize quickly and do it sincerely. And that's it. But if you hurt someone and you don't apologize, or if you call someone out during a meeting and do something that makes another person feel foolish, they will never, never forget that. I have seen people delivering toasts, for example, at a wedding or at an engagement party, and one of the attendees will correct the grammar or word choice of the person giving the toast. It's awful. It's cringeworthy, embarrassing. I have seen situations in meetings where executives have put down somebody. That person that you put down, not only I think is it morally wrong to make another person feel horribly about him or herself, not only do I think in some reciprocal way that we're not always able to see does it come back to you, but let's face facts. You've earned an enemy for life, and you will long forget that person's name, but he or she has not forgotten yours. And again, I'm not saying it's ethical and I'm not saying it's right, but it's the way of things. If you want to make a lifetime enemy, humiliate someone. And weird things can happen when that someone that you've humiliated sees an opportunity to even the score.
And I'll add a last addendum. Then I got to move us real quickly through three more. My numbering was off. I wrote so many things down. I changed all the numbering. So that was number 10.
That
but
was
along
10.
those lines is social media. And be careful what you say. Not just social media, even what you put in your emails.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Michael, if there's one message I could impart today to myself, to you, to your viewers, people have just got to chill out with the sarcasm on social media. It is eroding our culture. Trump didn't come from nowhere. Apologies to you all out there who like Trump. I'm not making political comments, but we can all agree the guy's behavior is horrendous. He didn't come from nowhere. He is an egregore or a monster that got created out of this toleration and encouragement of caustic, angry, destructive language on social media. It's awful. I deal with it among people who know me, who like my books. I say one thing that somebody disagrees with, and I get this storm of sarcasm. There's nothing wrong with sarcasm. Sarcasm can be really funny. Sarcasm can point out foibles. It's a normal use of speech, but it's not normal when it becomes the default mode of all our language and discussions. And we as a culture are going to lose all the yardage of civility that we have, and that's actually very important to navigating life in our culture, in our civic world. We're going to lose it if we don't chill with this unremitting sarcasm on social media. It is poison, and it will come back to haunt you. As with not humiliating people, There are good, freestanding, ethical reasons in and of themselves not to humiliate somebody, not to be perpetually sarcastic. But if you want to talk in terms of rational self interest, there's rational self interest as well. If you are hurtful or sarcastic over social media, you will one day make a mistake that will come back to hurt you. Get in the habit of not trash talking on social media. I personally know people in media whose careers were derailed because they trash talked over social media. They did it the wrong time in the wrong way, and they got nailed. And it may have been unfair, and their actions may have been defensible in some way, and it may have been that they were kind of made examples of by virtue preening people who were wrong in taking these people down. I dig that. But nonetheless, you don't want to find yourself in that situation. And if you get into a habit of expressing outrage on social media, that habit will get away from you, and it will get away from you at the wrong moment. And I'll say something else. I know for a fact there have been people who have gotten in trouble over social media, professionally and personally, because they've been posting in the evening when they maybe have had a few glasses of wine or they've smoked weed or something like that. If you're intoxicated, stay off social media. Do whatever it is you want to do, but don't do it on social media. You've got to be careful. I tell the same thing to my kids. This stuff is written in ink. I've made my own mistakes. It's easy to get carried away. We all got to avoid the sarcasm and causticness on social media. It's not only ethically wrong, it not only degrades our culture, but when you get into the habit, it will come back to bite you someday. That day will come.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And a last note on this. If you don't want it in public, don't put it in an email.
Amen. You can't fall for the illusion of privacy over email. And listen, I'm still learning these lessons myself. I still make these mistakes myself. But you got to realize if you say something sensitive in an email, do what you will, but you have to come to terms with the fact that you can't strictly regard that as private. Emails get shared all the time. Emails get repeated all the time. Emails get attached to chains. I still have to relearn these lessons myself. We all do, because 90% of our business dealings are over email. And I'm not saying people shouldn't express candor. I want people to be blunt. I want people to express candor. But don't fall for the fact that you're talking in private. You're not. Be very, very careful. I've seen people's careers get upended just because they said something relatively innocent over email, but they were saying something about another party. The other party got attached to it, and chaos followed. So be careful.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll move through these last three quickly because I definitely want a little meditation here at the end. Recognize others.
Say thank you. Say thank you. I'll keep it real simple. People really, really grok to when they're recognized. William James made the observation that the greatest human drive in life is that for appreciation. We hunger for appreciation. If you don't say thank you, the person will remember it even when you don't. It ties to the no humiliation rule. This is an affirmative iteration of that. Recognize people, say thank you. It gives them a stake in your success. If you don't do it, they will remember not being thanked. I have been thanked thousands of times, and each and every time I've remembered it. But it's also a blur to me. The whole is a blur. The times I haven't been thanked are much more vivid to me. It's human nature. I don't know why it is. I'm saying probably it's a weakness. It's a weakness that we develop in childhood, where we're sort of on the lookout for who makes us feel safe, who doesn't. If you don't thank somebody, they remember it. And even if you don't, I have appreciated every time I have been thanked. I have remembered every time I haven't. I ain't proud of it, but it's just human nature. Thank people.
I'm going to go along that line real quickly. Something that you put in here: remunerate people, remunerate valuable people, and if you can't, pay them quickly.
Right. I do believe part of appreciating and recognizing people should be expressed in cold, hard cash. People are working for a living, for God's sake.
Yes.
And, whoever it is, your hairstylist, your whatever. If the person is in a role where a tip is expected, then you should be generous about it. If you can eat in a restaurant, if you can afford to eat in a restaurant, you can afford to tip and tip well. If remuneration is fixed, if there's not a tip or something else involved or a bonus, you can gain equal goodwill from people by paying them quickly. Every time an organization I speak for pays me quickly or hands me a check at the end, I remember it. I'm grateful. I'm loyal. I want to return. I want to do things for those people. When somebody puts me off or takes forever to pay me or puts me through paces that are superfluous, I remember that as well, and it's a drag. You engender tremendous loyalty among people, and they will come to you first with something good when you pay them quickly. It's the material equivalent of a raise. Paying somebody quickly is the material equivalent of giving them a raise or a bonus.
Very good. Number 12, show up.
Isn't it great? Show up. Just having like a little cold or just being tired is not reason enough to break your word to a friend. Showing up, sticking around, being accountable when you've given your word that you're going to show up at a friend's party or anniversary dinner or book signing or whatever it is. People really remember that. They feel recognized by it. And you're also putting yourself in the flow of life. Good things, constructive things have happened to me because I have just been there. I've been on the scene. Some of our commerce really is social, relational in nature. And if you want to make agreements with people, you have to have relationships with them. A lot of people do business. A lot of people do business based upon relationships and affinities. And it ain't time wasted. It ain't time wasted. And a lot of good things happen in people's lives in terms of meeting people, meeting friends, meeting mates, meeting boyfriends and girlfriends, and so on, just because they put themselves in the flow of life. It's profoundly important, and people really remember it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Last but not least, and this one, act quickly. And you had an editor that told you, time dissipates energy.
I've always remembered that time dissipates energy. I really do believe that if you followed all of these rules in terms of preparation, in terms of intelligent persistence, in terms of focus, you will be able to act quickly. It's not rash action.
Mhm.
If you've been persistent, focused, prepared, developed within your niche, you will have all the information necessary to make a quick decision. And Napoleon Hill made the observation that very successful people, exceptional people, usually act quickly and they reverse themselves rarely. They don't never reverse themselves, but they only reverse themselves when new facts are brought to bear. I really do believe in acting quickly and decisively when an opportunity comes your way, when it seems positive and right, act on it. If you take a pause, there's probably a reason for that pause. An investor I know says if it's not a yes, it's a no. But if it's a yes, act quickly and act decisively. Yes, once in a while you'll be wrong, but the benefits that will accrue to you in the aggregate will be much, much greater than the handful of times you're wrong if you act decisively.
There is a poison that we get to watch out for, the never demonstrating half-heartedness, delay, or silence.
Yes, silence is the worst thing you can do. When I extend an offer to somebody, back in my publishing days, this would happen once in a while. When I would extend an offer to somebody and they wouldn't acknowledge the offer, I would feel that this person had no enthusiasm to match my own. And my wish to work with that person would drop 50% just based on the silence that they demonstrated. Half-heartedness is the equivalent of silence, if not worse. I remember I extended an offer to somebody to republish an old book that had no commercial prospects whatsoever, but that I just loved and wanted to do on a boutique line that I'm no longer publishing, but that I was publishing. It was a boutique line of spiritual classics. And the person wrote back to me something to the effect of, that sounds fine, and then had a couple of qualifications. Would you believe I never could bring myself to extend the offer because I felt that this book didn't have any commercial prospects. I was doing it just as a labor of love. I made a big demonstration of my dedication, my devotion to the book. I offered real money for it. And the response was half-hearted. And I thought to myself, that doesn't match my own enthusiasm. and this isn't the road I want to go down. So silence, dithering, half-heartedness, those are real mistakes because a lot of people will take those as a soft no, and there's reason to.
Follow the energy.
Yes.
On that note, where can people go to find out more, to find your books, and also to get in touch with you if they want a Discord back and forth, if they want to have some discussion on this?
Sure. Well, the book, The Mastery of Good Luck, which is a short book, is on Amazon. You can find it print, digital, audio. I also have another book coming out early next year called Secrets of Self Mastery on
Cool.
Amazon, where I write about some of these issues. If people want to check out my stuff or get in touch with me, they can visit my website, mitchhorowitz.com. I get the best, the most intelligent, the most focused emails from Inspire Nation viewers. I love them. And so I always love hearing from your audience members. They're always the most mature, seeking, specific, intelligent people. My email is up there. It's my real email. It's the same one my mother uses. You can write to me. You will hear back.
Excellent, excellent. Hi, Mom. On that note, any last words before we dive into a meditation? Any last words of wisdom you want to share with people today on how we can all get lucky?
Never neglect the basics because the basics are the thing that we think we understand. And things that we think we understand are almost always signifiers of where we can learn something more because they're so familiar, we neglect them. We neglect them. Ideas like persistence, perseverance, saying thank you, they sound so basic and humdrum that we think we have learned all there is to learn, but it's the very fact that they're familiar that leads us to neglect them. You will find radical new dimensions in your life if you can re-examine the basics.
Woohoo! I'm thinking of my wife, Jessica, the producer, and she is in my ear, not literally at this point, but I can hear her saying, when I go to say good luck, she says, no good luck, many blessings. And each one of these things is bringing blessings about, aren't they?
Yes, yes. These are all just words. We lay down words for things that we can't see. Call it luck, call it blessings, call it positivity. It's all dealing with unseen principles of life that we can influence by way of our perspective.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Would you mind sharing a meditation with us? And if we're driving down the road, let's park the cars or wait till we get home to do this.
Right, right. Yes, if you're in a safe place, let's close our eyes, take a few breaths together. I want to extend to you an invitation, and this invitation touches upon something that we were discussing during the show. And that is this principle, this question, this principle of determining those things that make you lucky and then doing more of them. Determining the things that make you lucky and then doing more of them. Luck is the outcome of factors. Luck is the outcome of cause and effect. It's just a term. It's a term that connotes desired outcome, fortuitous outcome. What are circumstances in your life where you have experienced desired outcomes? Who were you with? What kinds of tasks were you dedicated to? What were you wearing? How were you comporting yourself? What kind of mood were you in? What were your coworkers like? What setting did you find yourself in? What environments have been the happiest for you? What social situations have allowed you to feel most at ease, most understood? Each of us likes being asked sincere questions. What settings have you found yourself in which people asked you sincere, welcoming questions about your work, about your way of life, about your preferences, about your home? What kinds of people were asking you these sincere, welcome questions? I invite you to think over these questions in your mind and variants of them, and see if you can map out a kind of climate in which you've been lucky or fortunate or successful. Again, I'll return to the principle that was enunciated to my friend. Determine those things that make you lucky and then do more of them. I invite you now, and I'm going to pause for a few seconds so that we can all do this together, to just fall in to a mental picture of a time and a place where you felt very recognized, very seen, very at ease, very socially relaxed. Let's pause and picture that for a moment together. I now ask you to slowly take a few breaths and gently open your eyes, please. And we are back.
Woo-hoo.
All right. I can tell you went someplace deep.
I did. The funny thing is that when you talk about a place that's calm, relaxed, and nice and seen, it's putting me in front of the largest crowd possible, and I'm actually the most relaxed.
Same here. Yeah. Same here.
So something in our wiring.
Follow it. Yeah. Right. And the wonderful thing is everybody will have different experiences, some in front of a crowd, some more intimate, some, altogether different, but we'll all have those different experiences where we feel this greatest sense of constitutional affinity, and it's very individualistic.
Alignment. I love
Alignment.
it.
Yeah, right on.
This has been awesome, Mitch, as always. This has been absolutely incredible. I can't thank you
Pleasure.
enough.
Absolutely. A pleasure. I always love talking with you. The Inspire Nation viewers are the best out there. Your audience is the most mature, dynamic group of seekers that I come into contact with. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. And I'm going to say thank you for everyone. I got my arms out as if I've got everybody here and I'm holding everybody here. And thank you from all of us.
Pleasure.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, check out the Mastery of Good Luck, and begin stepping forward into your good fortune today and shine bright. Woohoo! Out of the park again, Mitch. You did it again.
Enjoyed it.
I just had the most incredible interview with Mitch Horowitz on the Mastery of Good Luck. To check out more incredible videos on attracting greatness into your life, click here, subscribe below.